David's return to his expansive estate on the outskirts of the Targon system marked the end of another profitable, yet solitary, trading mission across human-controlled space. As his shuttle docked, he peered through the viewport, taking in the familiar silhouette of his home against the backdrop of distant stars. His communicator buzzed. "David, welcome back," greeted Miles, his old friend and business associate, through the static. "Thanks, Miles. It feels good to be home," David replied, his voice tinged with the fatigue of long space travel. "I'll need your help, though. All my staff left for a colony job, remember? Got any leads on new hires?" "Actually, yes. I know you've never had alien staff, but there's an agency." David cut him off, his tone hesitant. "Alien staff, Miles?" "Hear me out," Miles continued. "They're reputed to be discreet and efficient. Plus, they're familiar with human customs. It might be good for you, not being alone out there." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, send me the details. I'll think it over." Days later, 2 new maids, Aira and Syra, arrived from the agency. They were from the Asilians, a humanoid species known for their grace and intelligence. David awaited them in the grand foyer, curious and slightly apprehensive. "Mr. Reynolds, I am Aira," said the first maid, her voice melodic yet assertive. She was taller than average humans, with shimmering blue skin and eyes that held a depth like the ocean. "And I am Syra," introduced the second, her tone softer, her skin a pale silver. "We are here to serve and ensure your home remains in perfect order." David nodded, studying them. "Welcome to my home. I trust Miles' judgment, but this is new for me. I hope we can all work together well." "Of course, Mr. Reynolds," Aira responded. "We come with the best recommendations and respect your customs and privacy." As they toured the estate, David explained his requirements and routines. Syra took notes on a digital pad while Aira asked thoughtful questions about his preferences and expectations. "In the evenings, I like the living areas to be quiet. I work late on my projects," David mentioned as they passed through his expansive workshop filled with engine parts and tech gadgets. "We understand, Mr. Reynolds. We are trained to be unobtrusive," Syra assured him, her voice soothing. Aira, observing the tools and devices scattered around, inquired, "Do you build all these yourself?" "Yes," David smiled, a spark of pride in his eyes. "It's a hobby. Keeps me busy. If you require assistance or additional tools, we can arrange that," Aira offered. "Our previous positions included maintaining various technological devices." David looked surprised. "That could be useful. I'm working on a solar sailor. Maybe you can help me sort out the navigation system tomorrow?" "We would be pleased to," Aira replied, exchanging a glance with Syra. As they finished the tour in the main living area, David turned to them, his initial reservations easing. "I'm not used to having so much help or company," he confessed, "but I think this could work out well." "We are here to make your life easier, Mr. Reynolds," Syra said, a gentle smile curving her lips. "You will not even notice we are here, but everything will be as you wish." That night, as David retired to his room, he felt an unusual sense of relief. The house seemed less empty, and for the first time in many months, he anticipated the days ahead with something akin to hope. Maybe, just maybe, this unexpected change was exactly what he needed. David lay in the darkness of his expansive bedroom, the silence of the space station broken only by the distant hum of the life support systems. It was a familiar comfort, yet tonight, the air felt charged, different. His thoughts wandered to his new maids, Aira and Syra, their presence in the house bringing an unexpected change to the rhythm of his solitary life. Just as he was about to drift into sleep, a soft whisper echoed through the hallway, stirring him to alertness. The whisper grew louder, and then stopped abruptly as his bedroom door creaked open. David propped himself up on his elbows, squinting in the dim light to make out the figure standing in the doorway. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for the intrusion." Alira's voice broke the silence, her form outlined by the hallway lights. "There's an issue with the security system. It seems to be malfunctioning." David flicked on his bedside lamp, bathing the room in a soft glow. "What's the problem?" he asked, concern knitting his brows. Syra stepped into view beside Aira. The perimeter alarms are triggering without any apparent cause. We check the external cameras, but there's nothing there. It might be a fault in the system. Sitting up fully now, David swung his legs off the bed. Let's go have a look. I don't want any surprises, especially not now. The three of them moved through the darkened corridors of the estate towards the security room. David noticed how Aira and Syra moved with a quiet confidence, each step deliberate and assured. They entered the room, a small space filled with monitors and equipment, the screens casting an eerie glow. Aira pointed to a blinking red light on one of the consoles. It started about an hour ago. We reset the system, but it keeps coming back. David leaned over the console, his fingers flying over the controls. Let me try something. After a few minutes of troubleshooting, he straightened up, a frustrated sigh escaping him. I can't find the fault. It might be a wiring issue, or something worse. We'll need to check the external panels in the morning. We can help with that, Mr. Reynolds, Syra offered. We have experience with electronic maintenance. That'd be great, David replied, grateful for their initiative. Let's meet here after breakfast. For now, let's try to get some sleep. As they walked back, David's curiosity got the better of him. How did you both end up working together? You seem to know your way around tech pretty well. Aira chuckled softly. We met in training at the agency. We both have backgrounds in technical fields. I was an engineer on my home planet, and Syra specialized in security systems. Syra nodded. When the opportunity came to work together, we took it. It's rare to find someone you can rely on so completely. They reached David's bedroom door, and he paused, looking at them both. Thanks for being on top of things tonight. I appreciate it. It's our job, Mr. Reynolds, Aira said, a smile in her voice. Good night, echoed Syra. As David closed his door, the weight of loneliness that had been his constant companion seemed a little lighter. The unexpected night interruption had shown him a glimpse of something he hadn't realized he'd been missing: partnership and the reassurance of not facing problems alone. Maybe, just maybe, this new arrangement could bring more than just efficiency to his home. He climbed back into bed, a faint smile lingering as he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, David found Aira and Syra in the kitchen, where they had already prepared breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of cooked grains and sautéed vegetables. It was more elaborate than his usual fare. Good morning, Mr. Reynolds. We thought a hearty breakfast might be a good start before we tackle the security system, Aira said, placing a plate in front of him. Thank you, Aira, Syra. This looks incredible, David replied, impressed by the effort. He took a sip of the coffee, finding it perfectly to his taste. You've done your homework on how I like my coffee. Syra smiled, pouring herself a cup. We aim to please. It's important to us that you feel comfortable with our work, not just in security but in making this house a home for you. As they ate, David outlined the plan for the day. After breakfast, we'll head out to check the external security panels. There might be a short in the wiring, or something that's been overlooked. Sounds like a plan. We'll grab our tools right after this, Aira said, her tone businesslike yet friendly. Finishing their meal, they collected their gear and made their way to the estate's perimeter. The morning was crisp, the air fresh with the scent of the gardens that surrounded the estate. As they walked, David noticed how naturally their conversation flowed. I've always handled things around here on my own. Having you both here? It's a change, but a good one, David confessed, adjusting his tool belt. We understand it's a big adjustment. We're here to make the transition as smooth as possible, Syra responded, handing him a scanner. They reached the first security panel, and David opened it up, revealing a mass of wires and circuits. Together, they tested each connection, looking for faults. Aira pointed out a frayed wire. There. See? That might be our culprit, she said, her fingers deftly isolating the damaged section. Good eye, David remarked, impressed. He repaired the wire while Syra documented the fix on her digital pad. As they moved to the next panel, the conversation turned to more personal topics. What was it like, working on your home planets? David asked, genuinely curious about their backgrounds. Aira shared stories of her engineering feats, her voice filled with a passion for her work. Building bridges between cities, literally and figuratively. It was rewarding, bringing communities together. Syra's experiences were different, but no less interesting. I was part of a team that designed security systems for interplanetary embassies. Every day was a challenge, ensuring the safety of diplomats and their staff. David listened, fascinated. It sounds like you both were quite established in your fields. Coming here, starting anew, it couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, but it's exciting to apply what we know in new contexts. Like this, Aira gestured around them. Plus, learning from you, understanding human technologies and methods. It's enriching. They worked through the morning, repairing and testing each security panel around the estate. By the end of it, David felt a sense of accomplishment, not just from the work done, but from the bond that had begun to form between them. Thank you, both of you. I haven't worked with anyone like this in a long time. It's been more helpful than you know, David said as they packed up their tools. We're glad to be here, Mr. Reynolds. And remember, it's just David, right? Aira said with a teasing smile. Right? David laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. Let's head back. I think we've earned a good lunch, and maybe this afternoon, we can take a break. I'd like to hear more about your worlds, if you're willing to share. We'd like that, Syra agreed, her voice warm. As they walked back to the house, David knew that the decision to open his home to Aira and Syra was perhaps one of the best he had made in years. The connection was not just professional but personal, a shared experience that enriched his life far beyond the confines of his estate. Later that afternoon, following a satisfying lunch, David, Aira, and Syra gathered in the spacious living room. The large windows offered views of the estate's lush gardens, the sunlight streaming in, filling the room with a warm glow. David took a seat on one of the sofas, gesturing for Aira and Syra to join him. You mentioned earlier wanting to share more about your worlds. I'm all ears, he said, his tone friendly and inviting. Aira sat down beside him, her posture relaxed. Well, where to start? My planet, Alicia, is covered with vast oceans and archipelagos. Each island is a bit different culturally, which makes for fascinating dynamics between communities. Syra chose an armchair adjacent to them, her silver eyes reflecting the light. My home, Cyrenia, is very different. It's mostly desert, with cities built around the few water sources. It makes us very resourceful and tight-knit. The landscape sounds striking, David mused. It must have been a big adjustment coming here. It was, but it's exciting to see other worlds. Like this one, Aira replied, her gaze sweeping across the room. Your home is beautiful, very open and peaceful. Thank you, David said, feeling a flush of pride. I've put a lot of myself into it. Speaking of homes, tell me, what are your favorite traditions from your planets? I imagine there must be some interesting ones. Syra smiled, a hint of nostalgia in her expression. On Cyrenia, we have a festival each year to celebrate the discovery of new water sources. It's a time for music, dance, and sharing meals with family and neighbors. It's about appreciating what sustains us. Aira leaned forward, animated. Alicia has the Festival of Lights where every island lights lanterns. They're set adrift on the ocean currents at night. It's meant to symbolize guidance and connection between the scattered communities. That sounds beautiful, David remarked, genuinely captivated. It must be quite a sight to see. It truly is, Aira said, her voice soft with remembrance. As the conversation flowed, David found himself more at ease with the presence of his new companions. A playful moment arose when he asked about games from their planets. Aira chuckled. We have a game called Riven. It's somewhat like chess, but more dimensions to it. I've never been good at chess, David admitted with a laugh. But I'm willing to learn Riven if you're patient enough to teach me. And on Cyrenia, we play Sands. It's all about strategy and movement, kind of mimics the shifting dunes, Syra added, her enthusiasm evident. I guess I'll be learning 2 new games then. Maybe you could teach me one tonight? David suggested, intrigued by the idea of engaging more deeply with their cultures. We'd love to, Syra responded warmly. As they continued talking, the afternoon slipped into evening. Without realizing it, David found himself sitting closer to Aira. Their hands brushed as they both reached for a book of photographs David was showing them. The touch was brief but electric, sending a warm thrill through him. Aira met his gaze, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Sorry," she murmured, though she didn't pull her hand away. "It's okay," David replied, his voice lower than intended. They held each other's eyes for a moment longer, the connection deepening. Clearing her throat slightly, Syra stood up. "I think I'll prepare some dinner. Maybe something traditional from Cyrenia tonight?" "That sounds wonderful, Syra." "Thank you," David said, reluctantly breaking the gaze with Aira to look at Syra. As Syra left them to head to the kitchen, Aira turned back to David. "About that game of Riven, shall we?" "Yes, let's," David agreed, his heart still beating a little faster from their touch. As they moved to set up the game, David felt a new chapter in his life just beginning to unfold, marked by unexpected friendships and a newfound appreciation for the worlds beyond his own. The evening passed with the quiet shuffling of game pieces as David learned the intricate rules of Riven under Aira's patient guidance. The living room was filled with soft laughter and the occasional clink of glass as they sipped a local beverage Aira had introduced. "It's fascinating," David remarked, moving a piece on the board cautiously. "Every move seems to unfold new possibilities, much like navigating the unknowns of space." Aira nodded, her eyes alight with the thrill of the game. "Exactly. Each decision builds upon the last, influencing not just your immediate next step, but the overall trajectory of the game." As they played, Syra returned from the kitchen, announcing dinner was ready. "I've prepared something special tonight. A traditional Cyrenian dish that I hope you'll enjoy." The trio gathered around the dining table where Syra had laid out a spread of various dishes rich with exotic spices and aromas. David looked over the dishes with a curious eye. "Everything looks amazing, Syra. What is this one?" he asked, pointing to a dish with a vibrant, aromatic sauce. "That's Jula stew. It's made with root vegetables and a spice blend unique to my region. It's hearty and a bit spicy," Syra explained, serving David a generous portion. As they ate, David savored each new flavor, appreciating the care and culture Syra had infused into the meal. "This is incredible, Syra. I can see why this festival is so meaningful. Sharing food like this, it's more than just eating, isn't it?" "It's about community," Syra replied, a soft smile on her lips. "Sharing a meal is sharing a part of ourselves." The conversation deepened as they discussed their travels and experiences. David shared tales of distant markets and rare commodities, his life as a merchant bringing him into contact with a myriad of cultures and challenges. "What was the most unusual thing you've ever traded?" Aira asked, genuinely intrigued. David chuckled, recalling the memory. "A shipment of bioluminescent plants from a planet in the Outer Rim. They were used in high-end decor, lighting up without any electrical power. Trading them was tricky because they needed special conditions to survive the journey." "That sounds beautiful," Aira mused. "I'd love to see something like that. Maybe we could try growing them here in the garden," David suggested, inspired by the thought. "It could be a project for us, bringing a bit of the galaxy to our doorstep." Alira's eyes lit up at the idea. "That would be wonderful. I'd like that very much." As dinner came to a close, the trio decided to continue their evening outside under the stars. They moved to the garden, where the night air was crisp and the sky was a tapestry of twinkling lights. Sitting on a bench, David found himself between Aira and Syra, the warmth of their presence comforting against the chill of the night. They talked about the stars, the constellations visible from different parts of the galaxy. "See that cluster? That's the Harp of Siren," Syra pointed out, her hand guiding David's gaze across the sky. "And over there," Aira joined in, directing his attention to another part of the heavens, "is the Navigator's Triangle from Alicia. It's used by our pilots to find their way home." "It's also interconnected," David reflected, his voice soft with wonder. "Just like us tonight." "Yes," Aira agreed, leaning slightly closer. "Everything is interconnected." Their conversation dwindled as they sat in comfortable silence, the vastness of the universe making their newfound connection seem all the more significant. David felt a profound sense of peace. The loneliness that had once seemed an inescapable part of his life now filled with the promise of friendship and shared futures. As they stood to head back inside, David felt Alira's hand slip into his, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. He smiled at her, then at Syra, grateful for the unexpected turn his life had taken. Together, they walked back to the house, the stars overhead witnesses to their growing bond. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between David, Aira, and Syra deepened into a comfortable, yet profound familiarity. The initial awkwardness that often accompanies new acquaintances had given way to a seamless integration of their lives. On one particularly clear evening, David decided to revisit the idea he had proposed during one of their dinners, planting the bioluminescent plants in his garden. "I've managed to acquire some seeds," David announced as they gathered in his study, a room filled with maps of star routes and botanical books. "I thought tonight could be a good time to plant them, if you're both interested." Aira looked up from a book she was browsing, her face lighting up with interest. "That sounds wonderful. It would bring a part of Alicia here." Syra, who was tinkering with a small gadget on the desk, nodded in agreement. "And it's a perfect night for planting, clear and calm." They moved to the garden, tools in hand, and began preparing the soil under the soft glow of the estate's outdoor lights. David showed them the small, luminescent seeds, their tiny bodies shimmering faintly even before planting. "As they grow, they should start to illuminate the garden paths," David explained, gently placing a seed in the hole they had dug. "Just a bit of the galaxy here on Earth. It's beautiful, the thought of it," Syra mused, carefully covering another seed with soil. "It's like making the invisible visible." Their work continued, each of them sharing in the task, their hands occasionally brushing in the soft earth. The physical closeness brought an unexpected rush of warmth to David, reminding him of the growing affection he felt for both Aira and Syra. After planting the last of the seeds, they settled on the garden bench to enjoy some tea Aira had prepared. The night was quiet, save for the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant call of nocturnal wildlife. "I've been thinking," David started, breaking the silence, "about how much this place has changed since you both arrived. It's not just the garden. It's everything. You've brought life back into this old house, and into my life." Aira smiled softly, her gaze meeting his under the starlight. "We feel the same, David. This place, and you, have given us a new sense of belonging. It's not just a job for us. It feels like home." Syra leaned forward, her voice earnest. "Yes, exactly. We've been part of many households, but none like this. You've welcomed our ideas, our customs. It means more than you know." Moved by their words, David reached out, taking each of their hands in his. "I'm glad. I never expected to find such companionship again, not after." He trailed off, the memories of past losses momentarily clouding his expression. Aira squeezed his hand gently, encouraging him to continue. "It's been hard, losing people, moving on. But with you both, I feel like I'm finding a way forward again." Syra added, "We're finding our way together." The emotional depth of the moment was palpable, and without needing to speak further, they each understood the significance of their connection. It was no longer just employer and employees. It was something richer, more complex. As they sat together, the newly planted seeds began to emit a faint glow, casting a soft light around them. The sight was magical, lending an ethereal quality to the night. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" David asked, a sense of wonder in his voice as he watched the light grow stronger. "Yes," Aira affirmed, her eyes reflecting the new light. "There's so much more to come." They remained in the garden until the cold became too much to bear, then retreated indoors, their steps light, their hearts full. The night had brought them closer, not just to each other, but to a shared future they were only just beginning to imagine. The atmosphere in David's home had transformed palpably since Aira and Syra's arrival. On a particularly serene evening, as the trio enjoyed a quiet dinner, David decided it was time to explore the emotional landscape that had been subtly shifting between them. As they finished their meal, David leaned back in his chair, looking at Aira and Syra with a contemplative gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about how things have been evolving among us," he began, his voice steady yet filled with an unspoken question. Aira met his gaze, a gentle understanding in her eyes. It's been on my mind as well, she admitted. There's a warmth here, something that goes beyond just living and working together. Syra nodded in agreement, her voice soft but clear. It feels like we're building something together, something meaningful. David's heart quickened with their acknowledgments. I feel that too, and I think we should talk about what it means for us, all of us, going forward. They moved to the living room, where the soft light and comfortable sofas made the space feel more intimate. David sat down, with Aira and Syra on either side of him, the closeness more pronounced than ever. Since you both came here, there's been a change in me. I don't just see you as my assistants or maids, David confessed, choosing his words carefully. You're my friends, and, well, I think it might be more than that. Aira reached out, her hand lightly touching his arm. David, we feel it too. This isn't just a job for us anymore. You've made us feel at home, valued, and cared for. It's natural that our feelings have grown deeper. Syra's hand found his other arm, her touch reassuring. What do you think we should do about these feelings? She asked, her tone inviting him to be open. David took a deep breath, his decision clear. I think we should embrace them, explore them together, without any preconceptions about what they should be. We're from different worlds, but here, together, I think we can create something unique. Aira smiled warmly, her support palpable. I would like that very much. To explore what this connection could become. And I as well, Syra added, her voice echoing Alira's sentiment. They spent the rest of the evening talking openly about their hopes and uncertainties, discussing how they could navigate this new dimension of their relationship. It was a night of many firsts. The first time David had spoken openly about his feelings since his previous losses, and the first time they all acknowledged the potential depth of their bond. As the evening wound down, the trio found themselves outside, walking under the starlit sky, their path illuminated by the glow of the bioluminescent plants they had planted together. The light seemed to echo the new hope flickering within them. Look at how the plants have grown, David remarked, stopping to admire the luminous trail. They're thriving, just like us. Aira laughed softly, her happiness evident. It's a good sign, isn't it? That we're on the right path. Syra squeezed his hand, her presence comforting. It's more than a sign. It's a reflection of us, of the energy we share and grow from. Standing there together, they felt the undeniable truth of their connection. A bond that had grown from shared tasks and simple proximity to something profound and promising. As they turned back towards the house, the glowing path behind them seemed to affirm their choices, guiding them forward into a future they were now eager to shape together. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, David, Aira, and Syra were already awake, gathered in the kitchen. The early morning had found them in a state of quiet contemplation after the profound discussions and decisions of the previous night. David was making breakfast, a task he now found more enjoyable with the company of his companions. Smells wonderful, David, Syra commented, taking a seat at the kitchen island. What's on the menu this morning? Just some omelets with those herbs we picked from the garden yesterday, David replied, focusing on not overcooking the eggs. I thought a good breakfast would start us off right for the day. Aira, who was setting the table, smiled softly. It's a good start to a new beginning, isn't it? She mused aloud, her tone reflective yet filled with optimism. David nodded, sliding the omelets onto plates. It is. I've been thinking about all the changes we've decided to embrace. It feels like we're stepping into a new chapter together, doesn't it? Syra picked up the plates David handed her and placed them on the table. It does. And it's not just about living together, but growing together. Sharing not just space, but our lives, our stories. They sat down to eat, the meal punctuated by comfortable silences and thoughtful exchanges. David considered the journey ahead, not just the practicalities of their new arrangement, but the emotional depth it promised. Last night, after our talk, I couldn't help but feel like everything was finally falling into place, David admitted, his voice carrying a note of amazement. I haven't felt this hopeful in a long time. Aira reached across the table, her hand briefly touching his. We feel it too. It's a rare thing to find people you can truly share with, who understand and accept you. We found something special here, all of us. Syra nodded in agreement. It's about more than acceptance. It's about creating a home, and not just any home, but one filled with understanding, respect, and care. What we have is unique, and I cherish it. As breakfast concluded, they cleared the table together, moving in an easy rhythm that had quickly become familiar. David leaned against the counter, watching Aira and Syra as they laughed softly about something trivial. He felt a surge of gratitude for their presence in his life, a sentiment that he knew needed to be expressed. "I want you both to know how much this means to me," David began, capturing their attention. "Having you here, sharing your lives with me, it's changed me for the better. I'm not just talking about the help around the house, but what you've brought into my life. Joy, companionship, and a chance to start anew." Aira smiled, her expression tender. "David, we feel the same. You've opened your home and your heart to us. You've given us a place to belong and a friendship that we value deeply. And whatever challenges may come," Syra added, her voice resolute, "we'll face them together. That's what families do, and I think it's fair to say, that's what we are now." David nodded, feeling a profound peace settling in his heart. "Yes, that's exactly what we are." As they finished cleaning up and the sun fully rose, bathing the kitchen in warm light, they made their way to the garden. The bioluminescent plants glowed faintly in the dawn, a symbol of their growing life together. Together, they walked through the garden, planning what they might plant next, their voices mingling with the morning birdsong, their shared future bright with possibility.